Hi folks, my name is Katie Schuster from the Online Learning Consortium. I'm the Director of Conferences and Events here. I want to welcome everyone to this Presenter Services webinar. I am going to actually turn things over to our Presenter Services co-chairs to introduce our speakers and the webinar today.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're focusing on the Career Forum Roundtables and the presentation type conversation, not presentation. So we're really happy to have you all here. A couple of our experts, Catherine Honig is the Associate Professor and Chair of the MBA program in the College of Professional Studies and Advancement at National Louis University, and the editor for the Merlot Psychology Editorial Board. And Angela Gunder is the Vice President of Learning for our OLC and the Associate Editor for Merlot Teacher Education Board. So thank you both for presenting, and I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Laura, and congratulations to all of you who have been accepted to do Career Forum Roundtables and Conversations, Not Presentations sessions at OLC. I think that these sessions are among the most dynamic, energetic, and interesting at OLC Innovate. So kudos to you all. Just a brief overview of what Angela and I will be doing for the next 45 minutes. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Career Forum Roundtables, and I'll take the liberty of making some remarks about best practices for facilitating these based on some great things that we've seen at the conference over the years. And then I'm going to turn it over to my most excellent friend and colleague, Angela, who will talk about conversations, not presentations. And then we will leave you with some logistical considerations. So that's the overview for today, and we can move right to the next slide. Brilliant. Okay, Career Forum Roundtables. We've got 4 on the docket for this year. You know, I've been involved with the Career Forums at OLC Innovate for a number of years now, and I've so enjoyed watching the evolution of the roundtables, both from the point of view of approach, but also subject matter. And what has been underlined now over a period of years is the role of the instructional designer. That's been a particular point of emphasis. And there's been some discussion about the experience overall in that job role. There's been discussion about the relationship between the instructional designer and the faculty member or subject matter expert. And what's really been nice to see is just continuing conversation over the years and high degree of specificity that we're seeing now. So if you look at the 4 sessions here, we're seeing a little bit more detail now, a little closer look at the career of the instructional designer, PhD or not to PhD. Love those titles. And look at this, improv techniques. You know, I'm going to be at that one for sure. So lovely to see the evolution, and of course a fantastic session on industry partnerships, which is of critical importance to all of us in academia. It is useful if you're a frequent flyer on the Career Forum Roundtables to reference this trajectory of you know, subject matter, and even if you are new, you know, I will let you know people do go to multiple Career Forum sessions, and if you see trends emerging and similarities between your session and others, feel free to raise those, make a nod to those. That's very helpful to participants. And I'll be at all of these, so I'll look forward to seeing you there. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you so much, Angela. All right, so big picture overview. If you are giving a Career Forum Roundtable, 3 things to keep in mind here. You're informing, you know, expectation is folks are going to leave with some new learning about the career-related EdTech emphasis you were talking about. Angela, you fooled me. All right, the one in the middle. Anyway, it's inform, explore, and engage. It's the next slide down, Angela. one before that.
They actually, they accidentally got deleted when I was typing in the chat, so I'm bringing them back.
There it is. There
That
it
was
is.
fantastic.
Hey,
Talk
all
about
right.
improv in presentations. You have to be ready to go with the flow. Penny is nodding.
Terrific demo. Okay, so inform, explore, engage. Simply to say that folks are going to come away with some new learning, but the way it happens is that it's, you know, it's a group-wide exploration of the issue that you're bringing, so it's a high engagement sort of thing. And no matter what you're presenting, you know, you're highlighting an ed tech career issue. This you will already have made clear in your proposal, but you're going to do it with a lot of audience participation. You're going to be making connections to current ed tech trends, current workforce trends, and you're bringing it all down to some specific career related takeaways for the folks who've come to see your session. You know, and the bottom line is when we say roundtable discussion, we really mean round table. You're going to be in a room with, you know, round tables, and people are going to be discussing. It could be, you know, a large group-wide discussion, you know, around a very large U-tape table. But the point is, it's not a multi-slide presentation. It's really a full-on discussion, and you've got 45 minutes to bring your best game to facilitating that exchange. And to that end, we've got a few more specific areas to cover on the next slide. So high level, great, they're working great now. So highest level, highest level, you know, the first remark here, but this is not unimportant. Do please make sure that you are aligning your proposal to the roundtable discussion. And while this may appear self-evident, it can occur that in the passage of time, you know, from the time that you've submitted your proposal to the time that you're coming to the presentation, you're thinking that you have another idea that would be very interesting for participants. And our response to that would be, fabulous, bring it to the next OLC conference, right? But for this one, you want to hang with the proposal that you've made, and they're all fabulous, so why wouldn't you do that? But, you know, participants are expecting, you know, they're expecting you to present on what you have proposed. So once you're in there, again, high level here, you're going to be exploring a specific career-related issue. You've outlined that in your proposal. But what we find works very well in these sessions, and it will probably naturally emerge, but it's good to frame things in this way intentionally. It's very interesting if you can use the session to evoke multiple viewpoints and different perspectives on the issue that you're bringing. You know, if there's some debate out there about it, fantastic. It would be good to bring that to the session, or perhaps you're just seeking, you know, for the audience to share their experiences and their perspectives. But this is a very nice use of the session, keeping in mind that your participants, you know, they're cross-institutional. So it's a fabulous amount of learning that comes from the sharing in the session. Okay, next slide. Thanks so much, Angela. All right, so this brings it down to a little bit more level of specificity. And of course, I know that everyone who comes to OLC Innovate, whether you're presenting or, you know, participating in sessions, you're probably a very experienced presenter, an experienced speaker. You can speak extemporaneously and you can wing it when you have to. But I have to tell you, having been on both sides of the Career Forum Roundtable, attending and presenting, that by and large, preparation is your friend. I am pleased and proud to say that, you know, last year's sessions were so well attended that at least one of them was standing room only, and many people were standing, and they were standing outside the door and peeking in. So, you know, the point is that you are working toward the development of an enriching and lively and sort of inspiring and interesting discussion with possibly a very large group of people. So of course, the technique that works so well here, and we saw all of our presenters doing this last year, is to come with a prepared discussion guide, right? You know, all the questions that you want to cover during the time that you have. The good news is you're going to have a screen in the room. And everybody typically puts their questions up on the screen. Now I have here present one slide with discussion questions because I want to underline that this is not a multi-slide presentation. But Katie will remind me that a second slide is okay. And the second slide should be one that reminds your participants to fill out the session evaluation. And those session evaluations are super, super helpful. So 2 slides, right? So one is your discussion guide, and you might even hand that out to individual roundtables if you like. And the second slide is your evaluation. And the other thing to keep in mind, again, knowing that everybody here is a natural presenter, it is good also to plan in advance the approach that you will use to moderate the session. There may be 2 or 3 of you, and it's very good to have thought in advance about who will do what and when. Again, high level of preparation is your friend. So right side of the slide, underlining again that audience involvement. There's a lot of energy in these sessions, even when you get in the room. So do be sure to take a moment, welcome everyone, introduce yourself, let people know where you're from. It's a technology conference, so I tell you, lots of people start their presentations with a polling app, you know, and this might be where you start to tap into multiple perspectives. You might ask somebody, you might ask the group how they feel about a particular issue, what they think about a particular issue, you know, yes, no, agree, disagree. And many times presenters simply reach out to the group and ask them who they are: faculty member, instructional designer, university administrator. You can also raise hands, but you will see a lot of polling apps. Keeping in mind, right, that sharing with the participants, I think that's really the most powerful component of these sessions, both the roundtables and the conversations and not presentations, that opportunity to learn how things are working, you know, sort of across the country and perhaps internationally. And this is very nice, of course, at the end of the session, and it goes so quickly, you cannot almost imagine that it is 45 minutes have passed. But please take a moment to wrap things up and summarize big picture takeaways for your session before everyone leaves, because in the energy and excitement of the moment, it's easy for the session to end and people walk away and think, well, wait a minute, what was all of that? So those, you know, those wrap ups and takeaways are important. And to that end, you know, the wonderful group that I present with at OLC always prepares in advance a document with link outs to, could be articles, websites, other media that allow participants to continue to explore the issue that's been under discussion. And in addition, what we will do, we have a prepared document, but it's very possible that in the session itself, more emerges, and so we may augment the document. A Google Doc works beautifully, and it can be linked to the OLC presentation website. And I think people like that very much. So bottom line, inform, explore, engage. If you keep that in mind, frame your session in that way, you'll have a brilliant roundtable. And again, I'm looking forward to visiting all of them in Chicago this year. So thanks very much. And at this point, I can take a few questions, or I may turn it over to Angela so she can talk about conversations, not presentations.
I'll give the uncomfortable teacher pause to wait while folks generate questions. And you can feel free to throw them in. I mean, we're super collegial here. Also use the mic if you'd like
Correct.
to. Stunned silence at your wonder, Catherine. Your brilliance and your trenchant wit has left people.
Those career forum roundtables are ready to go. Going to be the best part of the conference. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
She's just that awesome. Well, it's my turn. I am so excited. Oh, wait, there's a question from Kevin. For large attendance, can we do table activities?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I would, and then there may be report outs afterwards from the tables, you know, at the end. That's fairly typical. I can't recall, but how many sessions, but several did it that way last year. It's very appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say too, with both of the session types, that there is room and latitude for you to get a sense of who's in the room beforehand. I think sometimes those check-ins are really important, and they can help you tailor and frame what you're doing. Obviously, still staying true to the outcomes that you put for your session description and title, but just, you know, really tailoring your message to the folks that are there. I think that goes a long way, regardless of what type of presentation you're giving.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are more questions, feel free to keep on putting them in the chat for Catherine, and then I'll have time at the end of my segment too to take questions as well. This is the second time that I've had the opportunity to present on this this format, and I have to say it's not lost on me that it's disingenuous for me to be giving a presentation with slides on not giving a presentation with slides. So when my colleague, Jess Knott, who's at Michigan State University, when she and I first did this, we built an activity, and we're gonna do that activity again today. But the fun part of it is that you can benefit from seeing all of the answers that people gave last time. I left them all up in the space that we're gonna be working in, and you can use that as a cheat sheet. You can feel free to borrow heavily, to steal heavily. I feel like there's a Picasso quote somewhere in there. And use that to inspire what you do with your session. And really and truly, the origins of this session came from this notion that we talk a lot about active learning, and we talk a lot about collaboration in our work with teaching and learning, regardless of our role. And yet we don't really walk that walk when we give presentations at a lot of academic conferences. So a couple of years ago, folks said, let's build the space and the capacity for folks to model the behaviors that we want to see in the digital learning spaces that we work in. And it's been a great format in terms of not only its history and the use cases that I'm going to share with you in a second, but also the ways that people have sort of remixed and iterated upon that design framework that we gave them. We said, we're giving you the chance to actually create a collaborative, constructivist learning environment. How would you reimagine it? And that's really the spirit of not only conversations, not presentations, but I would argue all of the points of engagement that we seek to have at our OLC conferences and all of our professional development that we put together. So in terms of the format, we've been using elements of this in a lot of different places, and it follows this sort of similar pattern of sharing a short didactic, giving people the opportunity to not only discuss, but to ideate, to actually generate new ideas, and then to share again. We're going to share those practices across the room. In terms of how people share, it is very different. I am, as an instructional designer at heart, once an instructional designer, always an instructional designer. I believe in multimodal forms of expression. So folks do tend to use a lot of different techniques, not all at once, thankfully, but different techniques to engage people where they're at, whether it's back channeling on social media, or if it's using a Google Doc or some other tech tool in order to capture ideas, so that people are not only forced to speak. I'm a person that presents as an extrovert, but I'm actually an introvert. So when folks during a presentation give me the opportunity to chime in by typing somewhere, that really melts my heart. Like I really appreciate having that opportunity to do that. And I definitely love that this format allows you to encourage collaboration, encourage rich collaboration, but sort of meet people where they're at and where they prefer to dialogue. We have seen iterations of this in a lot of different places within the OLC. I'll give some examples. So if you've participated in any of the summits that we've had particularly the Community College Summit, it's an area where they would have a panel that would give folks a provocation. And then afterwards, there would be folks at tables that would be working together on a collaborative Google Doc to answer questions together. And then those ideas would be amplified at the end with a sharing session, or even better, that document that was created, that artifact from all of the ideas that were shared, would then be given out on social media, would be given to colleagues. So again, you're extending the power and the impact of your session by giving people opportunities to not only share ideas that are generated, but actually build together during that time. And if your particular session, the outcomes of your session allow you to align that to that notion of constructing new knowledge together, I would highly recommend that you do that. If you've also attended an OLC Collaborate event, those are really built on that same idea too, of having archivists that are helping to capture discussions that are happening live after a provocation from a keynote speaker. So just thinking about it in terms of what are the big ideas that I want to share with folks that I want them to then dig into and flesh out and build out, that's a really awesome way to do things. In terms of just tips for success, there's a lot of creativity that can be employed here. And sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. It can be like, oh my gosh, Angela, you're talking about all the stuff that I have to do now. I feel like I've got this chore of creating a new presentation from what I was originally thinking of. And in actuality, less is more. Thinking about the presentation in terms of being about people and the ways that you're going to encourage participation. That's a really good way to start. And just some tips for how to make that happen. As I said before, giving a brief didactic and then asking a question, giving people time to think about that question, share perspectives, and then come back to share out as a larger group. You can fill that time by just sort of chunking that out, and thinking about questions that people can answer quickly, I think is really important too, because sometimes the challenge is if you give too big of a question, folks don't have time to unpack those ideas. I really like knowing who's in the room before I talk to folks. So KWL charts are one of my favorite things to use, old K-12 technique, but asking people what they know about a topic and what they want to know about a topic at the beginning of a session. And then at the end of the session, having them reflect on what they've learned and what they're going to carry away. Really simple to do in a table in Google Docs. There's all sorts of charts for you to do that, to do it collaboratively, and it's still incredibly impactful. You breaking away from the notion of being a sage on the stage and being more of a guide on the side. I know we use that all the time, but it works really well here. And walking around the room, checking in, chiming in, amplifying voices that might, people that don't necessarily want to speak up, making sure that everybody hears what they're thinking, helps to build a really good community of practice within the space. And last but not least, I am shameless about bringing candy and being extra kind. Candy and kindness go a long way. Folks are really good sports. You can feed them chocolate and ask them to do you favors. You can have folks at different tables volunteer to be supporters of you. If you need somebody to take notes, like actually reach out and ask people to help with those things. Make it a community, and your tone and your attitude within that session goes a really long way. I am a person that never takes myself too seriously. And, when things that happen that are crazy, like you start deleting Catherine's slides in the middle of when she's giving a presentation, it goes a long way to just have a good tone and make people feel like they're comfortable, that it's a space where they can actually engage. The other thing too, I love that I will always ask Angela what she asks me to do. Usually it's fun. It's usually, I'm asking for people to be partners in crime, so it's not so bad. Planning is really important. I talked a little bit about having focus prompts for folks, things that they can actually dig into. And if you're having trouble with coming up with questions that might be used around your topic, you can really lean on formats like design thinking and Google Design Sprints. If you Google both of those things, there are tons of resources that are already built, and you can basically plug in your topics, but then use those formats to structure the engagement, the points of engagement in your session. Collaborative note-taking, as I talked about beforehand, is also a big part of this too. You can prepare that space that you want people to work in beforehand. That really helps things. You can also have plants in the room. If you have people that you know that are your trusted friends that can come to your session, you can have them sit in the session and be ready to help you take notes and work on that too. That also goes a long way, especially if you're giving corny jokes and you need somebody to laugh at them. Bring people, then they can laugh at those things. Make sure that your resources are accessible. This is huge. You know, we talk about equity and inclusion as something that's a value across the board, regardless of how we come into our work and the work that we do at our own institutions. And there are a lot of practices that even though folks might not ask for a specific accommodation, we can lean on universal design to make sure that everybody can actively engage. So if you need to give people an anchor in terms of a slide or content, or if you need to give them an anchor in terms of a piece of paper with written content on there, feel free to do so. Even though we're not saying you're standing in front of a slide and pontificating, you can absolutely have printouts, worksheets, you know, graphic organizers, electronic spaces that you'll have people meet in order to make sure that people can participate, and be willing to make accommodations on the fly. If folks say, you know what, I really want to do it this way, be flexible and allow people to contribute and still have a voice, even though you may have one idea for how you want things to go. I have referenced a ton of collaborative technology already. We're going to be using Padlet in a second, which the last time we did this, I noticed that there was an uptick of people that did presentations that use Padlet. So Padlet owes me a check in the mail for giving them a plug for this. But in addition, I think that social media and the back channeling that happens there is an often underutilized tool. One of the nice things that happens about latching on to the Twitter hashtag for a conference is that, you know, for those that have attended Accelerate before, there are a ton of sessions. And, you know, even if you're at the conference, it's still common to experience FOMO, or fear of missing out, because you'll be presenting and at the same time, your other colleague is presenting in another room against you, and you can't benefit from that. If you have people in the room using Twitter as a back channel around that hashtag, folks that are at the conference can follow in the conversation and they can chime in. And that happens more often than not. I will find tons of folks that they couldn't come to my session, but they're like, oh my gosh, somebody else is talking about Joseph Campbell's monomyth and using, you know, storytelling in instructional design. Like, I'm really interested in that too. And then I find new folks to collaborate with in the future. So if you encourage your folks that are in the room to use those back channels that they're comfortable with, it can help to amplify the message getting out and further work together. I did talk about stacking the audience with allies. You know, in addition to conscripting your friends to take part, don't really set yourself up as the only expert in the room. I think that there's this notion that if you're going to submit a presentation, that you have to be the grand high poobah of that particular topic. And in actuality, what we need to be thinking about is how can we actually collaborate and, you know, move our collective knowledge together. So you're sort of like the Sherpa and the facilitator of bringing all of that knowledge together. You're not necessarily there to know every answer to every question. And panels can be a nice way to do this, even informal panels. If you have other folks that you want to be in the room to speak to things, that's great. And if you see people in the room that, you know, we're doing work around the same areas that you're talking about, call them out, you know, talk a little bit about what they're doing and give them space and the opportunity to talk about that in their own words as well. And last but not least, you know, make friends in the session really quickly and have the friends make friends, sort of connect that. I know this sounds very touchy-feely. It's not really like that, but in actuality, again, as an introvert, networking can be really sort of daunting. And if we're talking about topics that we're all passionate about, that takes away a lot of that pressure and that sort of weirdness about networking. We're just sharing ideas, and we're sharing context, and we're being authentic about our questions. I can't tell you how many sessions that I've attended that the people that came up and talked to me afterwards, I wanted to stay for another hour and just talk to them about all the things that they were doing. You don't have to worry about waiting that hour. You can actually build a lot of that into your session and create a space where people can form that community. And last but not least, create that back channel to continue the conversation. Catherine really referenced this about if there are other things that you want to do that, you know, are not part of your session, but you want to continue that, you absolutely can do that beyond the context of the session that you're presenting. Make sure that you meet your outcomes, but open up those threads for conversations later on. And don't be afraid to reach out to folks that have those same questions too, and submit a session. Even if you've never presented with them before, submit a session with them for another conference. Continuing those threads is really, really important. And I can't tell you how much I've received from presenting with people that, you know, I've barely met, other than we have that one commonality of a passion around a particular topic. And they've become folks that I've worked on research projects with, on other initiatives with after that. Okay, so those are my tips for success. We will make all of this available to everybody too, but right now we're going to turn it over to an activity. I've created a Padlet, and I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask everybody. Laura graciously put that link in the chat so that you can get to it, and I'm going to stop my share for a second. And then what I will do is I'm going to share this window. Give me 1 second. And thank you, Katie, for that plug about the CFP for Accelerate coming up. A lot of times it's like, oh my gosh, I have all these ideas that I want to get to. You know, you can collect content and collect ideas and inspiration from the session that you give, and then turn that into something else that you end up doing in the fall at Accelerate in sunny Orlando. All right, let me make this screen a little bigger. So I told you before, I promised you had a cheat sheet of all of the things that folks shared last time. And this first block up here, this is the question that I'm asking to this group. And for those that have not used Padlet before, it's a virtual whiteboard of sorts. You can put all sorts of multimedia content, not just text, within here. And it does a lot of really great things about having, you know, synchronous and asynchronous points of collaboration. So you could absolutely use it within a session if you wanted to. It's free to use. Fun to design. They had this donut. I don't know why I chose pink donuts. I don't eat gluten, so I don't even eat pink donuts, but maybe I was trying to sway people with candy and sweets like I talked about before. So in order to use this, if you've not used it before, simply click on this plus sign on the bottom of the screen, and it will give you the ability to actually add a new block here that you can write in. So I've asked the first question here. Oh, where did my chat box go? Let me open it up. Awesome, cool. The first question that I want you to answer, what is your presentation about in the length of a tweet? What is your presentation about in the length of a tweet? I'm trying to delete my own thing. Oh wait, let me move this out. There we go. Ta-da. I love watching people type live. Choice architecture and defaults in online courses. Awesome. Presenting a bigger picture. You're gonna have to get to dig into some of these things in a second too. This is great. I like just, oh, apps and hacks. I thought it was just apps, and then mic drop. OER, mic drop. This is great. I'll give you just a couple seconds more to continue answering these questions. And this is sort of that KWL chart piece of rather than asking you what you know about conversations, not presentations, first and foremost, I'm getting you to think about how to contextualize your particular session in your own words, in plain language, in a short amount of characters. Okay. While folks are continuing to answer, I'm going to throw the second prompt up there. Please hold. I'm juggling a ton of screens right now. There we go. Question 2. Let me do this. You can see my OCD right now. What are some strategies that you were thinking of employing in your session to make it conversational, collaborative, and inclusive? And if you are feeling stumped, there are some answers below that you can leverage. But bonus points for those that branch out and come up with new ideas that are not on there. A pink donut for polling app. Awesome. For the polling app person, do you have a specific tool that you're thinking of using? You can write it on there. Asking people to think about choice architecture and conference venues. That's a good question. Definitely scaffold that so people can start to build that answer throughout the time that you're working. Oh, I love that folks are responding to the question directly under it too. Post materials ahead of time, articles related to the concept. Absolutely. Flipping the lesson is a great way to go. Have their participants share their experiences, good and bad. Also fantastic. I was just part of a panel at Upsia Solar where we said it was Vegas rules in the session where people could share whatever they wanted to share, and we were not going to share the material out intentionally. Depending on what your topic is about, you can create those environments and those safe spaces where people can share confidentially, and then they don't have to feel like they're going to be put on blast on the internet. We've done that a lot for work that we do around equity and inclusion, where folks have some trepidation about being authentic and sharing. Cross-departmental collaborative projects, very cool. What else do we have here? Breakout groups with facilitator at each table. Yep, if you have 5 presenting, that's fantastic to have people move around and break out. We've done some cool things with gaming around that too, where we've had people play games to teach them a topic, and that's been really essential for doing that. I also think too, having a diverse set of voices in the presentation helps to shake things up. So every 5 to 10 minutes, our brains tend to wander, as we know from cognitive psychology, and having different people speaking at different times can help to reawaken that attention. Begin with a visual collage and have participants describe what they see. Oh my gosh. Fantastic if you have a topic that can do that. Okay, so then last but not least, I'm going to ask the third question, and this is mostly for all of y'all. Question 3 is, what questions do you have for us, for this group collectively, not just me, and for the group that we have not yet answered? And you're more than welcome to put that on Padlet and I'll answer too, but also if you want to bravely grab the mic, you are more than welcome to do that as well, and we can do it verbally. And if you have questions for Catherine as well, if you said, oh, I forgot to ask her something. Happens to me all the time. No questions? Wow. Y'all are just experts at collaboration. I'm really excited for all of these sessions that are coming up. I have to say, I have noticed that that there has been a sea change, but a change nonetheless that I accept, that more and more sessions, regardless of whether they have these 2 formats and types that Catherine and I have described, are wholly collaborative in nature, that more of us are seeking opportunities to have conversations, to have these roundtables. And, you know, part of it is just a response to, like, we don't want to necessarily sit in sessions where people just talk at us the entire time. So that gives me a lot of encouragement that the needle has moved, and a lot of this is happening organically.
Angela, I saw a question in the Padlet that may have been from before. I'm not sure if it's a new question or one that was previously out there on preparing the Google Doc to attach to the OLC conference website.
Yeah, so yeah, and there was one too about a template for a collaborative Google Doc. You know, is that something that
Right.
you can come up with on your own? Yeah, absolutely. So you can for sure create what you'd like to create. Katie can speak a little bit more to, and I'm going to switch back over to the slides in a second, but Katie will speak a little bit more about just the ways that you can upload materials and get materials to the OLC website. If you have things beforehand, absolutely put them up. That's how you're, you know, handling the accessibility. And then the other thing too that I'll add is that if you need any sort of examples or any sort of ideas for how to put those things together, if you want inspiration, please reach out to Catherine, reach out to myself. Both of us have been doing this for a long time. We have access to a lot of different materials for each of our respective formats, and we're happy to provide you with materials. I have another question in here too, and I want to be respectful of time because we have a couple more slides to go. But there's this question about a tip to plan for technology not working and being ready to go low tech. And I would add that low tech or no tech. I 100% not only plan for myself if the Wi-Fi goes out, if you know, if I don't have access to a tool or if it's not working, but also that notion of you know, BYOD. People are going to come in with all sorts of devices. There's also BYON, bring your own nothing, which Robbie Melton is is the coiner of that phrase. I like to make a couple of different plans, almost sort of like different recipes for myself. So if I have somebody in the room that just doesn't want to collaborate on a device, they really want to engage one-on-one and in person. Todd's point here of encouraging people to pair up, or even around a table, having one person sort of be the tech guru, note taker, and then other people contribute, that can go a long way. Another thing too is there's usually pen and paper in the rooms in the back of the conference rooms that the hotels provide. I will grab that and put that around on different tables and encourage people to take analog notes. Even though I'm a digital gal, I still write notes on paper, and I like to respect people wanting to do that too. So just a little bit of pre-planning about like, okay, if everything fails, what would I do in order to still get to the outcomes of that activity? Just having that in your back pocket, and knowing that you might be giving that plan to some people, even though the technology is still working, some people might leverage that too. Bring sticky notes just in case. Yep, index cards are great too. I tend to have a bag of supplies. I usually have a pair of scissors, which is kind of strange, like not great in the airport when you're flying and they're like, oh, what's this? But yeah, bring all sorts of stuff. And candy, bring candy too. I highly encourage. How do you encourage?
Imperative someone see a website and you know you can't get to the website, selected screenshots, you know, also your friend. I think it's unlikely to occur, but again, it's the backup plan. So
yep. Yeah, how do you encourage folks to gather at front tables? They always want to sit in the back. Todd has a great suggestion as they come and ask them to sit with somebody and at the front. Sometimes because this isn't based on slides, I'll go to the back. And that really shocks people. You know, if they're all congregating in the back, I'll go to them. And then it's like, oh, okay. I am a person that tends to sort of lurk and sit in the back too. And I think as long as you're engaging people where they're at and making sure that you have enough people enough to foster the conversations, folks are pretty gracious and they're willing to accommodate you if you ask them with kindness. So when I start in the beginning, I don't really care where people sit, but once it's time to converse, I'm like, hey, would you mind joining with this other group? Or, you know, can we make sure that we have collaboration? You're the guide. You know, you can help usher people to where they need to be, and folks will generally play along. Sometimes people won't, and that's okay. You know, they're not going to leave and say that was the meanest person, you know, Angela was telling me to sit with other people and talk to them and eat candy. Like that doesn't happen.
As you correctly noted, Angela, these are popularly attended sessions, and the likelihood is that folks will want to sit, so there will not be extra space.
For sure. For sure. And I also, I'm not offended when people walk out of my session. There's a lot of sessions that are happening, and sometimes people are like, okay, I've got what I need here, or all right, this is not necessarily what I thought it was going to be. That's okay. I think you just keep the show going, and that it's, it's no harm, no foul. I mean, I would rather folks not sit in sessions that they're not going to benefit from, and there's no offense there. But as you keep things moving, and as you explain to people really what you're looking to do and how you want it to go, again, most folks are gracious, most folks stay. You're going to definitely give them the evaluation, because they're going to have really nice things to say in the evaluation, because you ask them for their input and their insight, and that's really important. Okay, I was not a good co-presenter, and I hope I left enough time for Katie for logistics. She might say, no, Angela, you're fine. But if she doesn't say that, I apologize. It was just such a delight to talk to you all about one of my favorite session formats. And if you have any questions, I will put in the chat my contact information so that you can reach out and we can continue the conversation. So over to Katie.
Thanks, Angela. And I will speed through logistics since you took up so much of this conversation. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right, so your career forum rooms and your conversations, not presentation rooms, will be set up in round tables to facilitate that conversational aspect of both session types. There will be a podium and a head table and a screen at each room, and also mics. So you might, if you have multiple presenters, you might have to share mics, but I want to stress how important it is for everyone in the room, as well as an accessibility consideration, for you to use the mic for your facilitation of the conversation, but also if you do break up into small groups or things like that, and you're reporting out, it's really, really important also for the mic to either be passed as they're reporting out, or for you to repeat into the mic what people have said or any questions that they may have asked. Again, we want everybody to be able to hear and to be able to participate fully in the conversation. So it's really important to use those mics. Another thing that has been mentioned a few times, and I put a few plugs into the chat, is also the importance of uploading your materials to your conference session page ahead of time. I know that these are not necessarily slide intensive presentations, but if you have materials, the link to your Google Doc, if you're going to be using a collaborative Google Doc, even a link to a document where you've posted resources, or a PDF or some other document that you have resources listed on, things like that are really important to upload to your session page. I will actually be sending out an email to all presenters with instructions. You can find instructions on the conference presenter FAQ page, and we've actually Laura has made a great short video on how to upload your materials or link your materials to your session page. So that is one of the two most common comments we see in the session evaluations that come in post-conference or during the conference are actually, I'll say three most common comments. One is that the presenter didn't upload any materials or resources. Two is that they didn't use the mic, so the audience couldn't hear well. And then the third one is that their title and abstract didn't match their actual discussion or their presentation. And so we've hit on all three of those today in this webinar, but I just can't reiterate enough that those are the comments we see most often. So if you are sure to do all three of those things, then you won't have any of those comments in your session evaluations. So, and as Catherine said, Catherine, if you could, or Angela, if you could go to the next slide, please. And this is the instructions. about uploading your presentation. And again, Laura made a great video. It's right on the presenter services webpage. So Todd has a question about the room setup for conversations. There, yes, multiple roundtables in the one room. So that is, most of our presentation rooms are actually set up in a similar manner. So, and the next slide, please. The screens and the projectors are set up to handle 16:9 slide formats. And as Catherine was mentioning, if you're doing 2 slides, one with your discussion topics or prompts, the other one should be this session evaluation slide to remind your attendees to fill out the session evaluations for your presentation or your session. There is wireless internet in the conference space, and as we touched on earlier, while we certainly never expect there to be an issue, we do host the wireless internet through a third-party provider that works with the hotel, so it's out of our control. And again, while we never expect there to be an issue, we always recommend that you have some sort of backup, a copy of your materials on your local drive of your computer, and a backup plan just in case. There will also be hallway monitors in the areas. If you need AV or tech assistance, you can grab a hallway monitor and then they will know how to contact me or where an AV or IT assistant might be that they can grab to come in and assist you and sort out any issues if they arise. Let's see, I think that is all. Christine was adding some comments in the chat about the room setup, which, you know, podium head table for 3 and banquet rounds. There's a hardline internet drop at the podium and wireless internet for attendees. And we are hoping to have the catchbox mics at most of the conversations, not presentations, and Forum Roundtable rooms, but we're still working on that. So they're fun to make sure that you catch all of those different comments from those discussions in the room. If there are any logistical questions, anything like that, we'd be happy to answer. With that, I will also turn things back to Laura to wrap things up for us today.
Hi, everyone. Just a reminder that we also have coaching opportunities. Both of these sessions have several great experts available. So if you are interested in someone just kind of looking over, talking through your presentation, talking about some ideas of how to handle some of these little things that we've talked about here, please consider signing up for coaching. That will be beginning soon and available up to the conference. So we hope you'll choose that. And with that, thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate you coming. The recording will be posted soon, so encourage others to review this. Thank you, Angela and Catherine, for your awesome presentation. I think that everybody learned a lot of good tips to being successful. So we look forward to seeing you in Chicago very soon.